Well, more and more evidence is emerging that there was suspicious activity at the Wuhan Institute of Virology before the pandemic outbreak. Some of this evidence points to the fact that this laboratory had workers who fell ill in autumn of 2019, which was around August 2019. The US State Department has released a fact sheet which says that for more than a year, the Chinese Communist Party has systematically prevented a transparent and thorough investigation of the origin of the pandemic, choosing instead to devote enormous resources to deceit and disinformation, while nearly 2 million people have died. This fact sheet from the US State Department was released on January 16. It goes on to say that the US government does not know where, when or how COVID was transmitted to humans, whether it was through contact with an infected animal or whether it was the result of an accident at the lab in Wuhan. But there is fascinating new information that this rare fact sheet from the US State Department revealed. The first was about these illnesses within the laboratory, within the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And it quotes, "The US government has reason to believe that several researchers inside the WIV became sick in autumn 2019 before the first identified case of the outbreak, with symptoms consistent with both COVID-19 and common seasonal illnesses. The CCP has prevented independent journalists, investigators and global health authorities from interviewing researchers at the WIV, including those who were ill in the fall of 2019. It says any credible inquiry into the origin of the virus must include interviews with these researchers and a full accounting of their previously unreported illness." That's major news. Now, the US State Department in this fact sheet then went on to talk about the risky gain-of-function bat experiments that the laboratory was doing. And now I've reported on that extensively on this show, so I'm not going to repeat it again now. But it does make the point that the World Health Organization needs to have access to these records about these experiments as part of their inquiry. That's something that China is unlikely to open the doors to. Now, the third really fascinating thing the US State Department has disclosed is that China has a biological weapons program and that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was collaborating on secret projects with Chinese military. It says this: "The Wuhan Institute of Virology has engaged in classified research, including laboratory animal experiments, on behalf of the Chinese military since at least 2017. It says the United States and other donors who funded or collaborated on civilian research at the WIV have a right and obligation to determine whether any of our research funding was diverted to secret Chinese military projects at the WIV." Joining me now is Liberal MP and former Australian Ambassador to Israel, Dave Sharma, and past chair of the Parliamentary Foreign Affairs and Defence Committee, former Labor MP Michael Danby. Thank you both for joining me. Welcome to you both. Michael, this fact sheet...
Evening.
Good evening. This fact sheet, in my opinion, is absolutely extraordinary. Does it concern you that China is engaging in biological weapons research? And what do you make of the mounting evidence that the pandemic may have started by an accidental laboratory leak?
Well, I never forget seeing on the investigation you did the footage of people with short-sleeve shirts and without masks, etc., operating from that Wuhan laboratory. The State Department put in a concern about that secretly in a cable in October, which you subsequently reported in October 2019. So they're going to get away with it, Sharri. They'll dismiss this as coming from the Trump administration. They've got a cosy relationship with the World Health Organization. The world, which had this plague sent on it while it was restricted within China, they let people fly out. Whether it's a biowarfare centre, I've long thought it is. I don't suspect they did it deliberately because it killed so many of their customers internationally. But we're not going to get $1 of compensation, the world, from this belligerent bullying regime in Beijing.
What's your reaction, Dave Sharma, to this US State Department cable, and particularly the revelation that workers at the laboratory were sick with COVID-like symptoms, you know, as early as potentially August in 2019?
Well, look, I've been concerned, as many people have been for a long time, about the lack of transparency from China with regards to the outbreak of this disease and the lack of openness to the World Health Organization other bodies. I mean, it seems, at least in putting the State Department report to one side, there was at least 3 critical weeks there at the end of 2019 and early 2020 when Chinese authorities knew that there was human-to-human transmission of a novel coronavirus, and until Wuhan shut down. And during that 3 weeks, the disease that grows exponentially obviously went global and then rolled on from there. And I think that's really what this World Health Organization investigation has to get to the bottom of, and I hope China cooperates with it. Look, the State Department report, I'd like to see some additional information. I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it did strike me as odd that this is put out in the lamest duck end of a lame duck administration 4 days before the administration changes. I don't think this information is new or it's come to light. So why, if the United States had this information beforehand the Trump administration, why didn't they seek to publicise it? They have certainly been settling some scores on the way out the door. And I worry, I mean, look, I ideally hope they haven't politicised something as important as this, but I would have liked to have, had a bit more time to digest that information and see some of the supporting evidence.
Do you think it might not be genuine or correct, even though it was from the US State Department?
Well, I just find it odd that they put it out 4 days before the administration changed, and it was the same week that Mike Pompeo accused China of a large number of things. Some of them, with good cause. Some of them, more in the order of political settling of scores. So I think if you want to have these documents taken seriously, it's like putting out a press release late on a Friday afternoon in Australia. You've got to treat the public with seriousness if you do so.
Look, just in terms
sometimes, Dave, those kind of press releases late on a Friday night have kernels of truth in them that have just got to be got out there. I mean, what's happened to all the disappeared researchers and doctors who died, etc.? We can't interview them. I think Americans should be applauded for getting out everything they can. I agree with you. You've got to take it with a grain of salt because it was at the right at the end, and the critics of the Trump administration will do that.
Yeah, I think I interpreted that as a case of getting the information out there in the public before it was too late, and often the intelligence isn't released, this sort of intelligence that there were people who were sick. A lot of that is kept, it's not made public. Our agencies might have information as well that they don't make public until everything is absolutely verified. This clearly wasn't 100% verified because they said, they had reason to believe people fell sick, but no one has been able to interview them from the Global Health Authority. But look, Michael, sticking with, the American relationship with China, how do you think this could change under a Biden administration? Are there any concerns at all?
Well, look, if the new senior officials and Mr Biden's rhetoric are taken at face value, then I think we'll see a continuity of alliance cooperation to resist the increasingly aggressive regime in China. But I'm concerned that there's a bit of a fight already broken out between the extreme environmentalists who are criticising the people who do have a realistic strategic view of China as China hawks. So to them, getting China to rhetorically sign on to a 60% carbon emission level reduction is all important, and for that, they say we shouldn't criticise China's mass sterilisation of Uyghur women, militarisation of the South China Sea, and we've got John Kerry as the climate czar there. He worries me. He wasted his time in the Middle East when he was Secretary of State, achieved nothing, and he basically made a deal with Beijing to get them to sign on to this rhetorical 60% level and gave away the South China Sea. The Obama administration did not react to what China was doing in the South China Sea, and that's to Australia's great disadvantage. 60% of our maritime trade goes through that sea. So it'll be very interesting to see, Sharri, what happens within the administration. I think the mainstream people in strategy are going to prevail. But you have to worry about the left of the Democratic Party using the environment as a battering ram to push their views.
Yeah, and not just the left, but it seems, that is going to be a passionate topic for Joe Biden himself.